Looking to do more with your electric drive? Volvo Recharge plug-in hybrids travel further in pure mode. That means more scenic routes, more spontaneous adventures. Volvo Recharge plug-in hybrids do more on electric. Visit volvocars.com/US.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/MBO. Terms and conditions apply.
However, he said, you know what? Okay, let's see what you got. And I put my research on this little table between us, and I slid it over in front of him. I read the first one, Under the Reservoir Court. I go through it. I read the first one to him. And you picture this. He's leaning back in his chair, totally disinterested. And he goes, read the second one to him. He starts sitting up. I read the third one to him. Now he's shifting in his seat and he's leaning forward. I read the fourth one to him. He picks it up and he goes, got up out of his chair. Now, this is ultra-Orthodox, got the payout. And he gets up, he comes over to me, he picks me up out of my chair, a little short guy, picks me up out of my chair and he kisses me on both cheeks. He said, do you know what this means to my people?
The history of our Earth is so different from what we can imagine.
Enjoy the journey.
The Smithsonian, that if they found out about a large skeleton somewhere, was to go get it.
I'm going to assume at least one person is right, because if one person's right, it busts the paradigm.
It all goes back to the fallen cherub. And the problem with the modern day church, they have a very truncated view of the supernatural.
This backdrop that's just pregnant with all kinds of meaning associated with this Mount Hermon event.
Welcome to Blurry Creatures.
And this guy defects from the kingdom. That's a big deal.
This one's got it all, guys. You know we love the 80s and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. It doesn't come close to this. We have, it's close, a little bit.
This is all the things, minus bourbon and cigars that I love, which is history and treasure hunts, right? And I made a joke, make a joke at the end of the episode about, Tony Merkel and I wanted to go find lost Confederate gold, which is, we actually do talk about. But
yeah. You just need Tim Alberino on this one.
We need Tim. I need a bullwhip. We need all the things, and maybe Tim with his jungle dreadlocks and his cloak to join us. But
we're talking the Copper Scroll, which is I don't even think we've said that yet. The Copper Scrolls is one of these Dead Sea Scrolls that was found in Cave 3 and
in Qumran.
In Qumran, and it's more like it's like an ancient treasure map. It's not like your traditional literary work that was found. This is like actually on a scroll of copper, and you can still see it in the Jordan Museum right now. You can go there, but our new buddy Jim from Oklahoma says he's figured out the clues to find the treasures of Solomon, basically, and all the ancient stuff, gold, silver.
Articles,
the Ark of the Covenant.
Articles of the Temple. I love this because Jim's just a regular guy. He's a retired investigator, worked in the law enforcement aspect of the fire department, investigating arsons, and he, in his retirement, was fascinated by this enigmatic scroll, right? Because as we were just saying, the scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls are papyrus. They're animal skin. They deteriorate. We have fragments, right? But this thing, because it's made of metal, the entirety of this thing survives, and Jim Barfield, the Copper Scroll Project, is our guest, and he believes he's figured it out, and he's cracked the code. And what he contends this thing says about what's hidden in Qumran, of course, which was the community there at the Dead Sea of the Essenes that hid away the Dead Sea Scrolls, is fantastic. And he's got a mountain of research he's put together over almost 20 years of discovering and unwrapping and decoding this treasure map, if you will, and
and
he's going to walk us through it, and it is pretty wild.
It's all things. It's all things in your wheelhouse. It's history. It's the Bone Zone. It is old. Some esoteric stuff hidden in the dirt.
Treasure.
It's metal detectors and the whole likes. It's
fascinating.
It makes it fun.
It's fascinating, and I love it because it does. We talk about it a bit, but what Jim proposes is stored and hidden via the Copper Scroll is quite possibly would be the greatest archaeological discovery in history, and the implications of the articles that he believed are hidden in Qumran would essentially play right into eschatology, into the rebuilding of the temple, etc. So fascinating guy you just want to kind of hang out with and listen to him tell his
I love it. It's all these obsessed guys that find these things. There's a lot of people we've interviewed like him over the years that just they find their rabbit hole, they get into it, whether it's the pyramids or chemical factories or the red heifer episode, which just kind of falls in line with some of the things we've been talking about lately. If you want to listen to some of our back catalog and understand where we are in this podcast, sometimes diving in right from this point is a little confusing, but you can become a member and listen to some members episodes where we bring on people who talk about their firsthand encounters with some of the weird stuff out there. But blurrycreatures.com/members. We're going to get Jim on this one and hop in. Thanks for everyone who supports the show, shares this with friends, and continues to come back week after week. Yeah, dig into the weird stuff. So let's get Jim on. Thank you guys so much. All right, welcome back to Blurry Creatures. We got a good one for you today. We're going to talk about the Copper Skull Project. We have Jim Barfield with us today, the director. You are a retired criminal investigator, and now you've devoted your life to uncovering these mysteries, and that gets us into like the Dead Sea Scrolls and a lot of the topics we talk about here on Blurry Creatures. We often go back to the ancient world, and we have a Book of Enoch actually coming out soon, so we like talking about these topics. But welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on, Jim, and we kick it off every time. What are your thoughts on Bigfoot? What do you think about Bigfoot? And then we can get into all the fun stuff that you like to talk about.
Bigfoot, I don't know. I used to follow it a lot as a kid, but do I think it's possible? I think it's entirely possible, but without any positive proof, like a skull or a body laying there. I don't know what to think. And the same thing, but I do believe that there are aliens. I very much believe in that. It sounds kind of crazy for somebody that has such strong biblical beliefs as I do. But who's to say that there isn't some connections with the Bible and the heavens? And that's the only best way I can put it.
Well, that's our show.
Yeah,
that's
you're tracking, Jim. So the same thing. We try to talk about how to contextualize things like Bigfoot or like UFOs and the aliens, in terms of the Bible. And we talk about extraterrestrials in the terms of the angels themselves are extraterrestrial and not of Earth. And so
and we talk a lot about giants, which gets us into subjects that more of the ancient world, like how many giant tribes there were and where they came from. And is Sasquatch sightings related to these giants that were supposed to have existed all over the place? And Luke and I have even gone to Peru, and we've gone to see some of the megaliths in Peru. So we've done our own little bit of sightseeing and exploring. So
I think that's awesome. I think that is fantastic. I love that about guys, willing to go out and stretch their limbs a little bit and get out there and explore. Find out for sure. Yeah. I believe in giants.
Yeah, I think it's in the Bible, and it's one of those things that's glossed over. A lot of times on Sundays because it's. But you got David and Goliath. That's an easy story we tell our kids in Sunday school.
Yeah.
But when we talk about the reality of these creatures, sometimes it gets a bit uncomfortable these days. But that's really what we do. We talk about ancient history, some of the enigmas, whether it be the pyramids or ancient megalithic construction, etc. But today you're here because the Copper Skull Project and the Copper Scroll is something that we haven't talked about on the show, which is why I was really excited to have you on. We have, as Nate mentioned, we have our own Book of Enoch coming out, and that really connects to Qumran and to the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? When they found the scrolls, the second most copied book was First Enoch, and among that was what you've been most interested in. But I would love to hear your story. You are as Nate said at the top, you're a retired law enforcement officer in your retired years. Instead of playing golf or fishing or doing something like that, maybe you still do that, but you've really devoted a lot of your time and efforts to deciphering this enigma of the Copper Scroll. So can you tell us a bit of your story and then lay some background on what the Copper Scroll is for our listeners that have no familiarity with this?
Yeah, absolutely. Golf, fishing, not even remotely. I just am not interested in that. My parents used to take me out every weekend, practically every day of the week. And as a kid, I got sick of it. You know, how many carp can you eat in 1 week? I just, I just fed up with it. But, I started off, my background is, I was a criminal investigator, primarily arson and causes for fires. Just because the house catches on fire and it's strange doesn't mean it's arson. Mm-hmm. So you got to make those determinations. And that's what I did. And I got fairly decent at it. I won Oklahoma Investigator of the Year and I won International Investigator of the Year. And you know what though? The reason I got fairly good at it is because I did so much biblical research. And because investigation is nothing more than research. You're investigating some ruins. Well, Qumran, the place where I believe all these treasures are buried, it's a set of ruins. So that's what I did. I applied some of the skills that I learned as an investigator, mainly documentation. Without your documentation, your investigative skills are nothing. You've got to document everything. And that's what I did. I applied my Bible, my love for the Bible, my love for God, and I applied that to figuring out this Copper Scroll because I met a guy. His name was Vendell Jones. Vendell was the Copper Scroll guy of his day. And I had no clue what his research was. So I went to visit with him. Just happened to meet a lady online. I was doing some biblical research. She was on, I think it was Israel National Radio. I went online. She was on there. I went on to listen to her class. She was like, now listen, she was doing this class out of Bethel. She was leading the class. She saw my name. You got to sign in. I'd signed in. My name was Jim Apache OK. Jim from Apache, Oklahoma is what it meant. Uh-huh. She texted me in private text. She said, "Where are you from, Jim?" And I remember it's out of Bethel, Israel. And I said, "I'm in Apache, Oklahoma." She left. She said, "Oh my gosh, I'm in Elgin, Oklahoma." Well, that's where my wife is from, like 8 miles from here. So here's this lady teaching a class out of Israel, and it's circulating through Israel National Radio, and we met. She invited me to meet Vendell Jones, who was, like I said, the Copper Scroll guy. I go to his house. I sit and listen to him. I don't understand how he's doing this. There's no documentation, no records. He's just all off the top of his head. Still a very interesting guy. And after that meeting, I decided, you know what? I was pretty good at this investigative stuff. I'm going to apply what I know about biblical research and investigative research and see if I can figure out this Copper Scroll. Now, here's the part that's hard for people to believe. It was in December when I finally got around to it. I met him like in June. December rolls around. I had taken, you know what a Nazarite's vow is?
Yeah. I remember that. That was like a big thing, like when I was in high school, and it was taking the Nazarite vow. There's some guys that do that. Like, you don't cut your hair. I remember that one especially, and it was in the '90s, mid '90s, and I had a buzz cut, and I was like, I just don't think I can do the long hair thing. But the rest of it, I might be able to jive with. But yeah, definitely. Yeah,
that's amazing. You're one out of 100 that knows what a Nazarite vow is, and I'm impressed that teenagers doing that. I did it. I took the vow. I did it for like 3 years, and sad story, I had a grandchild that passed away. Well, if you're in a room where a child passes away, you have to end your vow and start over. Well, at that point, I couldn't start over because I had like really long hair. And, whenever you're old, your gray hair becomes like cotton candy. You just go, like one little puff and your hair's everywhere. So I was constantly had to keep it in a long ponytail, and it got in the way a lot. But my point is about this vow. I separated myself to the service of God for those 3 years. And it was during that vow that I was like 6 months into my vow. My hair was about shoulder length by then. And I went up to my room. It was cold. It was December morning, really, really cold here in Oklahoma. And I decided I'm going to start today. I took out my copy of the Dead Sea Scroll, the Copper Scroll, and I put it on my table. And I had a version that was translated by Martinez. The guy, he did a good enough job that and listen, this is the hard part to believe. Within 5 minutes, I knew how to understand the Copper Scroll.
Wow.
You know how I did it? I did what most men never do. I followed the instructions. By gosh, it worked. And I did what it said. It said, under the ruins of the Valley of Achor. So I said, okay, Valley of Achor, this is where it's at. And I thought, well, you know what? The only set of ruins I'm familiar with is Qumran. So on my desk, there was a map of Qumran laying there. I picked it up, set it, and it's not unusual. Most people would be unusual, but for me, I'm a big Dead Sea Scroll guy. I laid it down on my desk, and I read the first one, Under the Ruins Valley of Achor. I said, I'm going to stay in this set of ruins until it doesn't work anymore. If I follow the instructions and it's not within this set of ruins, I'll find another set of ruins. Try again. Didn't need to. Found the first one within 5 minutes. Found the second one like within another 6 to 8 minutes. The third one, the fourth one, within 20 minutes, I had the first 5 figured out. And I am sitting at my desk going, oh my gosh, I've got to be wrong. This can't be. Because these guys have been trying to figure it out since 1952 and they couldn't figure it out. And they got PhDs. I had a high school diploma. You know, I don't have the background for this, but you know what I think? I think God honored my love for this stuff. And he recognized that I was dedicated by the Nazarite vow. And this all may be hogwash. It may be just a coincidence that I found all this. But within 20 minutes, I had the first 5 locations figured out. So that's how I got started on the Copper Scroll. But it was a great start. It was a fantastic start.
Jim, can you explain exactly what the Copper Scroll is, when it was discovered, and why it's been a mystery among all of the other things discovered in the caves of Qumran, which we know are, you know, a ton of the biblical texts, Book of Isaiah, Genesis, you know, along with First Enoch, which we mentioned, and a bunch of apocrypha. But one of the things that was really interesting was found was what you've been just talking about and studying was the Copper Scroll. Can you explain some of the history on that, and then what people have made of this up till now, and sort of in your take on all that?
Yeah, absolutely. The Copper Scroll is, and I'm just going to tell you what it is. It's a treasure map. It's a verbal treasure map where you read it. It gives you instructions. You follow the instructions. One after the other. There's 57 locations, one after the other, and it's in a pattern. Look here, dig this deep, find these items. And so that every time the pattern ended, it ended with how many talents. You know what a talent is?
Yeah, biblical speaking, it's a measure of weight.
Measure of weight, and the amount is 75 pounds. The best figure I could find, and the most common was 75 pounds. A talent weighs 75 pounds. Well, location number 2, and I'm going to get back to the description in a minute. Location number 2 has 900 talents of gold, polished gold. Do the math. You're talking at the second location, you're talking almost $2 billion worth of gold in one location. So the Copper Scroll is a treasure map. I don't like to call it a treasure map because I'm not a treasure hunter. Neither the guys that are sincere about the Dead Sea Scrolls, they're not treasure hunters either. But the Dead Sea Scroll is a library for the people at Qumran. Now, the biggest mystery is who were those guys at Qumran? And I'm going to tell you flat out, I'm absolutely sure those guys were the prophets of Israel. And they tied directly with, are you familiar with the Melchizedek order?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We just did an episode. We haven't released it yet. We did an episode on that guy, on that the mysterious guy and his appearances in the scripture, and figuring out, you know, who this could have possibly been, etc. We haven't released it at the time we're recording this right now, but we absolutely.
Would you rather I didn't tell you who it was?
No, your opinion's great. Yeah.
It's really important to this whole story. The Melchizedek order is absolutely important to this Copper Scroll story. It's important to any of the documents from the Dead Sea collection. The guy was, and it's really simple, nothing mystical about it once you figure it out. His name was Shem. You know who that is?
Yeah.
Son of Noah.
Son of Noah. That's all it is. And an easy way to figure that out, go to 2 Peter and look. Noah was the 8th teacher of righteousness. Well, that's a Melchizedek, teacher of righteousness. And that Melchizedek, he was the one that went through the flood. Noah and his 3 boys and his wife and their daughter-in-laws. Okay. Now, that person was Shem. That was the guy that Abraham paid tithes to. Was Shem. I mean, the Jewish people know this, but known it forever. I do chronology research as well. And sometime offline, maybe I could show you guys. I think you'd be pretty fascinated. Every time I teach a thing, people are begging me for the copy of my research. But all those guys, the boring stuff in the Bible, and Adam begat, Seth, and Seth begat Enos, and keep going down. But you go down those Melchizedeks, guess who the 8th one is? It's Noah. And the one right after that is Shem. Shem is the one. And on this timeline that I've got, the lives extend for hundreds of years.
Right.
And when one of them dies, the next Melchizedek in the family group, he takes over. And I can tell you who all the Melchizedeks were. That's why it's called a Melchizedek order and not a Melchizedek person. Yeshua, Jesus, was of the Melchizedek order.
That's right. The Bible talks about that.
Yeah, it's in Hebrews. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love talking to guys that know Bible because it makes my job a lot easier. So anyway, it's really important. It's really important to the story of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's really important to know that those people at Qumran, they were the Melchizedek order. That was the home of the prophets. The prophets were part of the Melchizedek order too. And let me tell you something you may not have known, and you may have heard about it. I made a discovery as I was going through the Copper Scroll, and I was trying to figure out, what did Jerusalem look like at the time of King David? And I found one. I found a map, and I thought, oh my gosh, why did these guys in Jerusalem, these PhD guys that are writing this story that I was looking at, why did they draw a map of Qumran upside down? And I got to looking at it, I thought, oh my gosh, that's not Qumran. That's Jerusalem. Exactly what I was looking for. What they did, the prophets, those guys at Qumran, and nobody knew this until I found it out. They built Qumran as a match for Jerusalem. If you took a map of Qumran, a map of Jerusalem, and did an overlay, they would match really close. The names of the buildings on the Copper Scroll match up with all the buildings or the main significant buildings on the map. Qumran map and the Jerusalem match up very, very well. So, and your buddy Cornuke, that's one of the things. One of the reasons I don't agree with it. Don't mind it all, like we said earlier.
Yeah.
I don't mind it all. But the guys at Qumran, they left an indicator where the temple is at. It's called the room of the teacher of righteousness. And right outside of his room, there is a pillar. That pillar is a pillar of Boaz. What are the 2 pillars in front of the temple? Boaz and Jachin. Why they only had 1 pillar there, I don't know. And guess what? That pillar, the capstones, are still at the exact same place and described as part of the instructions for figuring out the Copper Scroll. So back to the Copper Scroll.
Yeah.
It is a treasure map leading to the temple treasures, and the temple treasures are the treasures of King Solomon. A lot of the PhD guys think it was during Herod's time. No, guys, that's not true at all. I mean, with all due respect to them, this is all done. All of it was done. All the dating that you find about the Copper Scroll was at the time of Jeremiah. Jeremiah was the guy in charge of this whole deal. So I'll stop there and let you ask your questions.
So who has the Copper Scroll now?
This is like L.A. Marzulli. Like, look what I've got. Oh, look at that.
That's not the real Copper Scroll. That's nearly identical. I made it. I took a facsimile of the real Copper Scroll, blew it up at a local office store, and then I turned it upside down and wrote it backwards, just like they did. The guy that wrote this copper scroll, or a copper scroll very similar to this one, they had to do it backwards and upside down because they read from right to left. We read from left to right.
Right.
So, yes, there is. It's in Amman, Jordan, at the museum in Amman, Jordan. There is a real copper scroll.
Okay.
So if you're saying you think these treasures were buried at the time of Jeremiah?
Positive. Absolutely positive.
So when the Essenes at Qumran were storing away their libraries in these caves, they were, as you say, like a community of prophets. Do you think they were also guarding all of this treasure? They were aware they were...
Absolutely, yeah.
And why do you think they hid this map away? Was it because I guess I'm trying to remember the history of Qumran and when it sort of ceased to be a thriving space. I knew the Essenes were there, and they had separated themselves really from what's happened in Jerusalem, and they were sort of set apart, if you will.
Yeah.
So they create this treasure map to let everybody know, or let whoever know who would decipher it, that these treasures are hidden.
Yeah.
At what point do you think? So if it's buried in the time of Jeremiah, at what point do the Essenes disappear? Do you think?
That's easy, but it all happened because of the Babylonian exile. There was an attack. The date of the attack is given on two documents. It's called the marble tablets that were found in the Ezekiel tomb in Iraq. Then the other one is a Mech HaMelech. It is a 17th century document written by Naphtali Hertz. They give the date on the marble tablet gives a date of 3331 from Adam. That's exact to the year. That's exactly where all of this took place. The year that the copper scroll was written, the date is given on there. Same date, 3331 from Adam, because they date everything from Adam.
Oh.
And it's in the current Jewish timing. There's an additional timing that goes from Adam. I've got it on my timeline. It goes all the way from Adam to the year 2040. And that's about 228 years difference in the constant one and the Jewish one that's currently being used. And I can't tell you why. Don't know why. But back to your point, all this was done during the time of Jeremiah.
So, Jim, you think the Babylonians are advancing on Jerusalem? We know that they actually conquer Jerusalem and take the Israelites into captivity. We know that from the Bible. But you think as this is happening, that they're whisking away this treasure and depositing it at Qumran, or do you think it's been a deposit or a repository before?
It was.
Well, how do you? Okay.
It even talks about it on the copper scroll. It describes it. It tells you where it's at, describes it, and the walls of this thing. It looks like a pyramid. The bottom half of a pyramid that the top of it got cut off. And the walls are like 10, 15 feet thick. And there's really thick, like 3-foot walls inside. They got really tiny little doors that you have to get in. So if you got in the thing and you're trying to lift a 70-pound ingot out of there, you've got a job ahead of you.
You're a giant.
So, yeah, and these guys have buried them. You know who they were? There were 5 of them. And I'm going to name 3 of them that you'll know. One was Haggai, one was Zechariah, and the other one was Baruch. You remember Baruch? In the Bible, it's Jeremiah's scribe.
No, didn't remember him.
Oh, yeah. And there's even documents that are written by Jeremiah with Baruch being the scribe, and he's given credit for his work at the end of the document. Written or dictated by Jeremiah, written by Baruch the scribe. So all of this was done the time of Jeremiah. I got the documentation, and it's not something I came up with. It's a documentation that was available. You just had to find it. It's Jewish documents, of course.
Jim, what treasures are buried there? You said there's 57 sites. What have you deciphered from the scroll that you believe is buried in Qumran?
Oh my gosh, it's incredible. First, let me give you the first 3. First 3 locations. Location number 1 was 17 talents of silver service vessels. How much did we say a talent was weighed? 75 pounds.
75 pounds.
Yeah.
I do 17 times 75 pounds. You get a lot of weight there. Over a ton. I don't remember exactly what it is off the top of my head. But silver service vessels. Let's just put it in monetary value for a second. One bowl, 10 ounces. If you found a bowl solid silver, 10 ounces. It's worth about $350, approximately.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But what if that bowl, and it's documented that bowl came from the tabernacle of Moses?
Well,
now how much is it worth?
It's priceless.
Off the charts. And just one bowl. There's hundreds of thousands of bowls buried at Qumran, and goblets and platters, and it's all the vessels that are needed for the sacrificial system.
Yeah.
So what's there? You've got mostly vessels from the Temple of Solomon. You've got, in Second Maccabees, it describes it really well. The really important stuff, I mean, it's all important, but in the third location, that's where we're headed now. In the third location, it explains to you that there is a breastplate. What do you remember from your Bible studies? What is that breastplate called that the high priest wears on the Day of Atonement?
I just know the breastplate of righteousness. Right?
There you go.
That's all I know.
That's it.
I was trying to think, like, isn't there a name? Because the ephod, right? Isn't it ephod with all the the stones?
Yeah. How many stones are on it? 12.
You know, you're going to stump me. There you go. 12 for the 12 tribes. I should have known that.
12 for the 12 tribes. Yeah. And that ephod is named as being in the third location. Here's a really neat thing about this.
Oh, there's actually a breastplate of righteousness that exists, is what you're saying.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/MBO. Terms and conditions apply.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're telling you where it's at.
Well, they told us to put it on, Jim. When are we going to put it on?
Yeah.
Well,
he's got a copy of it. I know. He's made one.
You'll put it on just before you go to prison.
Yeah, 100%.
Here's the deal. Really interesting. This is the Indiana Jones kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Location number 1
is
about 380 yards from the ruins of Qumran. I'm sorry, location 1 is right there in Qumran. Location 2 is at the edge of Qumran. Location 3, where the ephod is at, is about 380 yards from Qumran. Here's the neat thing. All 3 of those are in a perfectly straight line. And I you know how I found it? As I was doing the last 5, I did was it 53? Yeah, I think it's 53. I found it. It's right there by a mikveh at the south end of the buildings. The next one was right by what they call a basin for the females to bathe, and whenever they're in their cycle or after their cycle. And it's got a special little trough. It leads the contaminated water outside of the buildings and deposits it outside the camp. The next one is in a specific room that I found it right away. The 4th one is very close to that 900 talents I told you about. But the 5th one is the cave. So you've got 1, 2, and 3, but the 3rd one is the cave, a specific cave that's even mentioned in the book of Second Maccabees. And I'll tell you about that in a second. But locations 53, 54, 55, 56, 57 are in a perfectly straight line, and they both point exactly to that cave I just told you about. And when I figured that out, I got cold chills, because I'm the guy that figured it out. The guys that wrote this, Haggai, Zechariah, and Baruch, they were talking to me. They were talking to the guy that figured this out. That's who they were speaking to, and I figured it out.
It's wild.
Now, you guys may be sitting there going, "This guy is full of baloney," and I don't mind, because I got a lot of things to tell you about that. Go ahead.
So this is found in the cave. This is the last scroll that they found? Do we have the whole entire thing still, or do we just have pieces of it?
So it's copper, so it didn't deteriorate like the papyrus or the scrolls did that we have fragments, right? So
but the whole thing is found.
It's made out of metal, man.
Yeah.
There's a picture. It's a little green gray like the old Statue of Liberty right now, but
it is. But
it's made. It's a different. You said it's a different. It's not this. The language is a little different, so it's more esoteric in the way it's describing, but it's just telling you these places where the stuff is hidden. There's no like, it's not like a literary work.
That's it.
Most people think Dead Sea Scrolls, they think this is some sort of like book that didn't make the Bible or something, you know?
Yeah, it's not, it wasn't intended to be literary work. It was intended to be instructions to find these treasures, which they're massive amounts of treasure.
So crazy. This is like a movie, Jim. Like it feels like this is like Indiana Jones 5, and we finally, we got rid of Shia LaBeouf and the rest of that crap they tried to put down our throats, and they bring back 90-year-old Harrison Ford, and he's digging up 57 sites in Qumran.
Guys,
and the Essenes, they hid all this treasure. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. Here's what happened, real quick. What happened was in that year 3331 from Adam, they were attacked at Qumran. Guess who attacked them? It was the Babylonians. That was the very first year that Nebuchadnezzar became king of Babylon. He was stretching his young legs, and he wanted to go out and kick some booty. Mm-hmm. And that's what he did. He went to Qumran and attacked them. They darn near lost Qumran. Had they lost Qumran, they would have lost all the treasures of the Temple of Moses, Tabernacle of Moses, and the Temple of Solomon. So it all happened at the same time. Well, after that attack was complete, a lot of guys were killed. A lot of the priests were killed. They decided, Jeremiah, I'm sure, because he was the head at that time in history. He told them, guys, let's get this stuff in the ground. We can't take it very far. They had the temple treasury right there on site. So they started taking all the temple treasury and started burying it in the ground all over the place at Qumran. 57 locations, actually 55, because two of those locations are in that same cave. Same two cave in the same cave. So that's how that worked out. That's why it worked out the way it did.
Jim, the obvious question here for me is: this is the last known sighting of the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah,
is at the time of the Babylonian sacking of Jerusalem by 586 BC, I believe, something along the lines of that. And after that, it sort of disappears. Do you think that the Ark is buried at the repository in Qumran?
Here's what Emek Hamelech says. Yes, that's what it said.
Wild. That's wild.
Not only that, Second Maccabees. You get a copy of Second Maccabees at home?
I do in a work of Apocrypha. I've got all the Apocrypha, but I haven't read it yet.
Wouldn't take you 5 minutes. Second Maccabees, second chapter. Just grab it, open it up, and read that first page of that. And it says that Jeremiah had all this orchestrated, and he took all the treasures of the house and buried them inside of a cave, and so sealed the entrance. Same wording, same description as the last description on the copper scroll, which is location number 57. 3 and 57 are the same location. They buried all this stuff. They sealed the opening of the cave and then buried the entrance to that cave for a long time in the future. That's what it says. So this was meant for, I'm telling you, I believe it's for today, because each one of those documents that verify or support my thoughts about Qumran being the location, they all say when these things are found, it will be the time of the coming of the Messiah, the regathering of Israel, and the biggest thing, it'll be the time of the coming of the Son of David, the Messiah. Wow. We're here. I told you I do chronology research. 6,000 years.
Are there any other documents that speak of the copper scroll that are extraneous to the scroll itself? Like, is it mentioned anywhere else? Is it talked about, or are the origins or the makeup of this talked about anywhere else?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Those same documents that they've been telling about. One of them it's called Emek Hamelech, which means Valley of the King, which is where we're talking about all this stuff happening at. It says that matter of fact, they're the ones that named all the writers of that thing. Hold on, let me show you some.
And is that a Jewish work?
Yeah.
It sounds like it.
Anything to do with that stuff is a Jewish word. You can't.
That makes sense. Yeah.
You can't separate them.
Sometimes I ask dumb questions just for the obvious, but yeah.
No, it's all right. That's fine. Yeah. Listen, here's what they say. These records were written by 5 righteous men. This is Valley of the King, Emek Hamelech. Shemur HaLevi, that's Baruch. Hezekiah, Zedekiah, Those two, I don't know for sure who they are. But Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the son of Edu the prophet. That is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And then it says, they concealed these vessels of the temple and the wealth of the treasures that were in Jerusalem and in every place, and they will not be discovered until the day of the coming of the Messiah, the son of David, speedily in our time. Amen. Then it says, these are the holy vessels and the vessels of the temple that were in Jerusalem and every place. Now listen, they were inscribed by Shemur HaLevi, the scribe, and his companions on the Luach Nehoshet, which is a copper plate.
Wow.
So, and that's not the only place that I find that.
And they haven't found any other copper. Is this the only?
No.
And this is before. This is written before it's rediscovered in when the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. Correct. This is written about
1950s.
1952.
Right?
It was found in 1952.
So this writing is old. It's not. They're not writing about the discovery of this, saying this is written by this. They're writing about this thing that they know exists that's missing until 1952. Correct.
Yeah. Remember, one of them was some tablets or like wall tile. Picture that of all things.
Yeah.
Tablets of Ezekiel tablets, or marble tablets. It's a whole book of Ezekiel, and this same story that I read to you about Emek HaMelech, Valley of the King, same two stories. One's written on a marble tablets inside of the tomb of Ezekiel in Beirut and Iraq. The other one was found in Lebanon. The Emek HaMelech was found in Lebanon. Now here you go. You've got these two documents saying the same thing. One found in Lebanon, one found one found in Egypt. That was Emek HaMelech. So you've got two very different sources, but the same story, same date, everything.
That's amazing. We say Lebanon here in Tennessee. It's
Lebanon.
Lebanon. Let me ask you this. So, your interpretation, your discovery, and your decoding of this treasure map, how's that been received, you think, in Israel or by maybe the archaeological community? Because what I know that these people don't like is when someone who isn't in the club figures out stuff they can't figure out. It's the story of Egypt to a T, right? Anytime you have a theory that's valid and verifiable that doesn't explain the way the Egyptologist Shama, whatever his name is, explains it, you're blackballed out. You're out, right? And this is really the story of archaeology in general. So how has this been received by in those circles?
First, his name is Zahi Hawass.
That's what I was thinking. Hawass. That's what I was trying to.
Zahi Hawass. That's the Egyptian guy. Well, here's what I ran into initially. I had one guy. I'm not going to call him what everybody wants me to call him, but he was not a nice guy. He, to this day, still does. Matter of fact, he's done a couple of History Channel pieces with me. We weren't in the same room at the same time, or there could have been a problem. But he said some really ugly things about me, my guys, that we were all in it for the money. And he had no clue what he was talking about. But here's the deal. Your question is a very good one. How do they take it? They didn't take it well at all. They wrote, like I said, some really ugly things about me. But here's the deal. I took my research. I go to Israel, long story behind it, but I'll go to Israel and I have a meeting with one of the lead rabbis in Israel. He looks at me and I finally get in to see him. It took me forever to get in, like 3 or 4 days, going up, back and forth, trying to get in. He finally said, okay, let this crazy guy from Oklahoma in. So they let me in. I go in there and my buddy Chris Knight is with me. I've got my research in my hand. He said, he gets up. He's not a real big guy, just kind of short fellow. He said, what can I do for you guys? I said, are you familiar with the Copper Scroll? He said, of course I am. I said, well, I think I've figured it out. That's where I lost him. He just went, I mean, he didn't do it intentionally, but I could just, gosh, I got a nut in my office.
Yeah.
However, he said, you know what? Okay, let's see what you got. And I put my research on this little table between us and I slid it over in front of him. I read the first one, Under the Ruins of Valley Core, and I go through it. I read the first one to him. And you picture this. He's leaning back in his chair, totally disinterested. And he goes, Read the second one to him. He starts setting up. I read the third one to him. Now he's shifting in his seat and he's leaning forward. I read the fourth one to him. He picks it up and he goes, he said, he set it down. He got up out of his chair. Now this is ultra orthodox. He got the peyote. Yeah. And he gets up, he comes over to me, he picks me up out of my chair, a little short guy, picks me up out of my chair and he kisses me on both cheeks. He said, "Do you know what this means to my people?" I said, "Yeah, it means the same thing to my people." He said, "No, I don't think you know." He said, "Do you know what it is?" I said, "Yeah, it's the treasures of King Solomon." He said, "More than that, Jim." Now he's calling me Jim. He said, "It's more than that."
Yeah.
He said, "This is the dowry for the coming bride." And lights went on I thought, oh my gosh, of course, because they were big on having dowries for their brides.
Right.
Well, this is the dowry for the coming bride, the bride of the Messiah. That's what this is all about. That's why it's so important to get these things out of the ground. That's why I was glad to do this show with you, because I want to tell the people in the English speaking world that it's here. If I'm truly correct, it's here. So I leave his office. I go to the head of the Antiquities Authority of Israel. A friend of mine in Lawton, Oklahoma, a little Comanche lady, knew him.
Wow.
Long story behind him. She knew him. And it's an interesting story. But she said, "Jim, I can help you with your project." I said, "How are you going to do that, Juanita?" She said, "I know the guy that works at the Antiquities Authority." And she goes through a woman's story, goes around and around the place. And I'm kind of late for an appointment, and I'm sitting in her office I was teaching at a Comanche Nation college. I said, "Juanita," I said, "how do you know that?" She said, "I met him years ago, blah, 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 out here at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. He was a general in the Israeli army. Then he became the head of the Antiquities Authority." She said, I met him years ago here at Fort Sill. And I said, "What is he, a janitor? What does he do? How did you, what?" She said, "No, his name is Shuka Dorfman. He is the head of the Antiquities Authority of Israel." She had my attention. 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in Israel and he picks me up at my little dumpy hotel, or I guess you call it a hotel, more like a hostel. And he picks me up. Him and his wife, Talma, picked me up at my little hotel. My buddy Chris and I, we go to his son's office at the Citadel Hotel overlooking the old city. He takes us there. He's got a room set up for us. I begin to explain. Now, here's the story. I'm going to go through it quick, but you'll catch on to it. He asked me why I was there. I said, "I figured out a copper scroll." And I know he thought I was an absolute idiot. I didn't say it like that, but you might as well have. He goes, and he did the same thing. He said, "Well, Mr. Barfield is very polite. He flew airplanes. We had some things in common. I flew helicopters for the Army. He was artillery. I was in the artillery when I first went in the Army. So we had several things in common." And he said, "Let's see what you got." Read the first one, same reaction. He's sitting there. He leans up. He goes through the whole story that I just told you. And he goes, "Stop." And I thought, this guy's not happy with me. Yeah. And he just said, "Stop." And I said, "Okay." He reached in his bag, his leather bag. And what do you call those things? A satchel, or I don't know. Anyway, picks him.
A man purse or merce? Man
purse. He dials a number, and in Hebrew, he's talking. And he explains, and he said, he looks at me, "Mr. Barfield, can you be here Tuesday?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "What for?" He said, "I'm calling in the two experts at Qumran. You're going to be meeting with them." And I said, "Okay, you got a deal." We met. That's how this all really got started, because that's where I started getting credibility. The head of the Antiquities Authority of Israel is inviting me to a meeting with the two top men for Qumran, and actually Qumran in the entire West Bank.
Wow. So you sit in front of the Antiquities, the head of Antiquities. You sit in front of one of the top rabbis, and you lay your case. Do you think they're ever going to look or do any excavating?
Yep, we did.
When do you think that
2009? Okay, 2009. The guy that showed up at the Antiquities meeting, Yuval Peleg, he was the lead archaeologist for Qumran. That was his home. That's where he worked. 90% of the time. And the other guy was the top guy for the entire West Bank and the Gaza Strip. He was the top archaeologist for all of that. Well, he didn't like me at all because I didn't fit his, I didn't have the PhD. I didn't have the credentials. But Yuval Peleg, he was sitting there looking at my research, and I was going through the same ones I just told you about, going through them. And he's looking at Shuka Dorfman in Hebrew. I can't speak Hebrew. Certainly can't explain it and understand it. That's the weird part. And he tells Shuka Dorfman, he said, I think this guy's done it. And Shuka says, well, tell him in Hebrew. And he said, no. I want to hear more. So people said, well, how do you know that's what they said whenever they were speaking in Hebrew? Well, I was an investigator. I had my recorder, my digital recorder in my pocket, recording every word that was said in that room that day. And as soon as that meeting was over, I took that recording remember the kissing rabbi?
Yeah.
I took it to him.
The old kissing rabbi.
I took it to him, and he was waiting on me. Yeah. And when I got there, he plugged it because he does a radio program even today. Goes all over the world. He put on his headset and he's sitting there listening to it. He goes, oh, and he takes the headset off. He said, you are not going to believe what they just said. And I said, I think they think I'm crazy. He said, no, Mr. Barfield. He said, they think you've done it. They think you figured out this copper scroll. They think you figured out this copper scroll.
Take out, hop in, and save up on Uber One this fall with Verizon. For a limited time, Verizon customers can get 3 free months of Uber One. That means $0 delivery on eligible food, groceries, and more, and 6% Uber One credit earned on eligible rides. It's just another way to save on the subscriptions you love at Verizon.com/Spotify. Subscriptions available at Verizon.com/PlusPlay. At 3-month promo, subscription auto renews monthly at $9.99 plus taxes unless you cancel. Visit Uber.com/Uber One for terms.
I've got a lot of grandbabies, like a lot. And when it comes to finding a gift for each of them, it could add up. But this year, while I was making my way through Walmart, I realized I don't have to spend a lot to get the gifts they'll love.
An OPI mini mani set. I'm gonna do so much nail art. Oh yeah, a Lego set. My own Walla water bottle.
Ooh, and that's just half of them.
Shop great gifts they're sure to love for $25 and under at Walmart.
Yeah.
So now I've got the main guys of all of Israel saying, and all of Israel, I mean, the top guy, the director general for the Antiquities Authority of Israel, they're all saying this. That's where things got crazy because this guy, Yuval Peleg, great guy. I really liked the guy. Very much a gentleman, very kind, and wasn't a snobby goofball like some of them were. He said, Mr. Barfield, we need to talk. And I said, okay. Anyway, long story short, I go back over to Israel. I'm there at Passover, and I call his office. And it just so happens, because normally at Passover, all the Jewish people are on holiday. He was there. I called, he answered, and I said, Yuval. I said, this is Jim Barfield. He said, oh, Jim. And I said, I got a question for you. He said, go ahead. I said, how would you like to be the archaeologist for my project? He said, I would love to. He said, meet me here at the office at the Antiquities Authority. He said, meet me here in, a couple of days, I don't remember. Anyway, at that point, we started formulating a plan to do an excavation in April of 2009.
Okay.
Well, my buddy, the one that I said was not real nice to me, he got angry. We were posting stuff on my website, and this guy was following my website constantly. And the same guy that I told you about that did the last, I did a TV show the other day, and he'll probably be on that one as well. Anyway, he was saying all kinds of bad stuff about me. He got his buddies together and they put a stop to the excavation we were doing in Israel. And I'm not going to say who it was because I don't want any more trouble from them. But they put a stop to it. And I got all the documentation. I got all the blogs where he said some really crappy stuff. But that's how that happened.
Why do you think they're trying to sabotage this?
It's very simple. They or PhDs. They have an ego the size of Dallas. They don't want some fireman from Lawton, Oklahoma to be the guy that figures out the most precious, most important discovery in history. I mean, this is going to make King Tut's tomb look like peanuts. Mm-hmm. Just that one 900 talents of gold. That alone will look like peanuts.
You said there were 64 places, right? That these items were
57.
hidden. 57. Yeah. Okay.
That's what they normally say. I'm telling you, there's only 57. But go ahead.
And we've found some of these. None of these have any of these locations,
but one.
All of them, but one.
All but one.
And they haven't been excavated though. None have been excavated.
Nope. We did the second best thing.
Did you go down there with like GPR or?
This will answer both of your questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
What we did is I got a phone call from New York. This Jewish fellow invited me there to meet with the guy by the name of what's his name? Moshe Feiglin. Moshe Feiglin was the deputy speaker of the Knesset. I fly to New York just to meet with this guy. And I'm sitting there, and I'm going to give you the really quick version of it. I'm sitting there with him, and we're in a private home. And I got my little tiny projector and my computer, and I'm projecting it on the wall. He's kind of not paying attention, which, made me a little angry. So I slapped the table and I said, hey, I came all the way from Oklahoma to show you this. And he's not used to people talking to him, I guess, like that anyway. And he looked and he said, okay. So I start showing him. Within 5 minutes, the guy's in love with it. I started showing him my actual research. And he said, Mr. Barfield, he's very religious, and he's an amazing politician, because he didn't take any guff from anybody. He said, why are you not excavating? I said, because your government will not let me. And he looked at me, he said, what?
Yeah.
I said, they won't let me. He said, why? I said, because one, it's in the West Bank. I said, number two, anything Solomonic period or before, which was exactly what this time frame was, right in that same area. I said they won't let you excavate. They don't want anybody to know about it. That's purely political, religious, political stuff that we're going through here. And he said, when are you coming back to Israel? I said, I'll be there in a month. He said, call me when you get here. I did. I called him. He met me at Qumran. And he said, bring your metal detector with you. I said, Moshe, I cannot run this thing. I said, you have to have permit. You have to, you got to have permission from several different organizations. He said, you just bring your metal detector with you. And I said, okay. I got there and I brought my metal detector out. It's not one you see on the beach. This is the head of it is one head. I got three heads for it. One, which is a 1 meter square. The other one is a 4 meter square, 2 meters by 2 meters. And that thing penetrates down to 50 feet. And it distinguishes between ferrous and non-ferrous, which is ferrous being iron, non-ferrous being
precious
metals.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We scanned 5 locations, all of them. I've got the documentation. I got the printouts, the computer printouts to prove it. Massive quantities of non-ferrous metals there.
When are we going, Jim? Let's go get it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well,
yeah. Where's the project at now? Right today.
I've known where these were since the day I went over there. This is not like I'm trying to find this stuff.
Right.
I know where it's at. It's just getting through the political red tape to get this stuff out of the ground, because I'm not going to say who said this, but a very important person in Israel said, the Temple Mount is an atomic bomb. Yeah. He said, and the Ark of the Covenant, that's the button. What he's saying is those items are so precious and so controversial that it could cause an upheaval in the Middle East, which it will.
Yeah, I was going to make a point, Jim, on that, because what's fascinating is we've been kind of tracking with what's happening with the red heifer situation over there, right? Which is the story since last year, and of course that's one of the sort of more obscure, but Mosaic law rituals in order to purify articles of the temple. And what you're talking about here is I'm listening to you talk about the Mosaic bowls and all these articles of the Solomonic temple. It makes me think this is another piece, if not the last piece, other than the red heifer, which would have been the ritualistic purification part, to actually fill the rebuilt temple, which is why, as you're saying, this is sort of the atomic bomb here, right? Because if you have the purification ritual done, and you also potentially have the articles should they excavate, then all you're missing is the actual rebuilding of the Jewish temple, which the Jews, as you point out, are waiting for their Messiah. So the guy's saying this is the dowry. They're waiting. This is what fills the temple.
That's why the little short guy got up and kissed around on my cheeks, is because he was so excited about what this all means. And the guy that you're talking about, the red heifers, the guy that organized that whole deal, his name is Byron Stenser.
Yep.
He and I got to be friends because we got similar interests and similar backgrounds. I mean, he wasn't an investigator or anything, but we're just average guys. He was the one that put together the project to look for the red heifers.
Right.
And Byron, they found a bunch of them,
right?
Which was a miracle in itself. Well, they finally got the 5 and took them over there. Now, here's the normal what I've been told. Now, is this absolutely true? It makes sense, but I haven't seen the documentation, so I can't say that it's true.
Right.
Is they take what is called the chalal. It's a stone jar with the ashes of the red heifer, starting with the one that Moses prepared, and they put it in there. Then they take the next one. There's been 9 of them from the time of Moses. This one is the 10th one.
Mm-hmm.
When they do this one, if I was in charge of this sacrifice, I would tell everybody, we can't get them done yet. We're a little busy. And in the meantime, I'd be sneaking off in a corner somewhere, and I'd be preparing this ashes of the red heifer without anyone knowing.
Agreed.
I would.
That's what they're saying. That's what they're saying they did.
Right, because this is just like the Ark, right? Just as you're talking about, this is what Hamas says that they have said, and whether you take this as propaganda or not, but the October 7th event was about the red cows, according to them, right? And so this makes makes a lot of sense, right? Because the closer that Israel inches to having all of the pieces of the puzzle to do it, it's a shot clock. It's a ticking bomb on the Dome of the Rock and what's happening on top of Temple Mount currently, which is then again is we're probably, if we want to speculate, that is a world war. That sparks a world war if
it could.
You probably have more people who don't want this stuff coming out of the ground than just about any conspiracy theory out there. I mean, we talk about just the mountains of evidence for some of these creatures to exist, something like Bigfoot. And you have all these academics, and you have the universities, you have all these people who don't want this thing, other treasure hunters who don't want this stuff coming out. You've got governments who don't want to come out. You've got countries who don't want this stuff to come out. You've got academics, archaeologists. Yep. You've got just about everybody doesn't want this stuff to come out of the ground except a few small people who are, I guess, excited to see some of these prophecies come forward.
I mean, the biggest treasure ever found, right? I mean, we're talking like the value of this monetarily, aside from the sort of intrinsic value, the pricelessness of of articles associated with the Temple of Solomon and Moses and the heroes of the Bible. You can't put a price that's like putting a price on the Mona Lisa or something that is just like it's one of one. Even if there's 1,000, it's still one of those are 1,000 of 1,000, and there's not anything like it.
Right.
Jim, do you think that some of these things are going to usher in the Antichrist? Because that's what a lot of people are worried about when it comes to these
Here's the thing. That's a great question. Thank you. Will it usher in the Antichrist? No, the Antichrist will usher himself in. Here's what people don't understand. They say the Antichrist will come and he will stop the daily sacrifice, the morning and evening sacrifice. Well, the Antichrist is not a good guy.
Right.
And if he thought sacrifices were detrimental to the belief systems of the Jews and the Christians, then he'd let them go. That's what people don't understand. He stops the morning and evening sacrifice. He stops them because they are a good thing. Christians think that the sacrifices were some nasty, bloody, sloppy mess. That is absolutely untrue. They think that they were, it's a terrible thing. They're sacrificing little animals. And I tell them, whoa, wait. Let me ask you, have you ever sacrificed an animal?
No.
Yeah, we had T-bone steak. I probably have it 3 times a week.
There you go.
And it's
Do
delicious.
you pray over it? Do you put it on your altar on your table and pray over it?
I thank God for his provision, yeah.
You bet. You bet. What do you think those things?
I guess.
That's what's going on with that, because the ones that ate it with the priest, and there's some that you couldn't eat. Like, for example, the red heifer. Can't eat that one. That's a whole burnt offering.
Right.
So you can't eat those, and there's certain way that they have to be done. It's incredibly clean and kosher. And that's why people think, oh my goodness, he's working with the Antichrist. No, guys, I'm not.
This is what we tell people too, because there's a lot of controversy when we talk about the red heifer, is that like God's timing is not relevant to the things that we can or can't do to speed it up, slow it down, etc. We can't. Yeah. It happens within God's sovereignty when it's going to happen.
That's it.
And I think it's fascinating that this, it's so interesting because these pieces fit into, as you said earlier, it fits into eschatology, right? The idea that Israel is remade in a day, and the prophecies of the prophets of old, we're seeing in our lifetimes right now, the things that are prophesied in the Bible happen. And some people get real sketched and scared of that kind of stuff. Like somehow, as you said, there's people are celebrating, we're not celebrating or excited, but to be in a time where it feels like the end of the age, and these discoveries and prophetic things are playing out in real time is exciting, because our hope is not in any of this. Our hope is in Christ, and our hope is in Jesus, and He is the final sacrifice. But does the temple have to be rebuilt? Yeah. Why? Because the man of perdition has to seat himself in there and call himself God. It has to be rebuilt.
Let me show you something. Remember what I told you about the chronology research?
Yeah.
What I did was way out of the ordinary. I went from Adam, and this fits right in what we're talking about. That's why I'm telling you this. I went from Adam, and I used a butcher paper about 30 feet long with 1/8 of an inch being 1 year. And I ran it out for 6,000 years. I was a firefighter, so I had some time.
Yeah.
And now, wait a minute. I did that, and I got it all stretched out, and I got to the time of Jeremiah. I found a link, a positive, solid link from Adam to Seth to Enos, and its exact numbering. And I did the exact numbering until I got to Jeremiah, and I couldn't find another one. Except I realized, wait a minute, Daniel, 483 years from the going forth of the commandment to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the cutting off of the Messiah. I locked it all in at that point. And there's a story behind that, but I want to make my point. From the year that, you remember Jeroboam? And this is all part of the same thing. Jeroboam was a bad guy. He was a king. He was one of the 2 first kings when the kingdom split, Judah and Israel. He was in charge of Israel. His name was Jeroboam. Jeroboam, he led the country into some really crazy, it's kind of United States kind of feel. He led them in there. They were doing sacrifices. They were molesting children. You go through the whole batch. Horrible stuff. Now, from the year that he died, now picture this, from the year that he died, he never repented. Leviticus says that your punishment is multiplied by what if you don't repent? 7, Leviticus. 7 times your punishment will be multiplied. The kingdom of Israel, Judah's punishment was, by Ezekiel's standards, was 40 years, remember? You laid on one side, then you laid on the other side. What was it for Israel? 390. 7 times 390 from his death. I multiplied it and I put it down on a Excel spreadsheet. I transferred all my data to Excel spreadsheet. Guess which year it ended? 1948. That ain't all. I've got about 5 other ones that did the same thing. My point is this, what you said about timing is incredibly important, but the difference is between what I did is I used scripture, only scripture, to confirm all the biblical dates. Yeah. That's it. And then I used Gregorian, and I checked it, and I checked, I've got what I call the confirmation points. I've got like 16 of them. I use Roman dating, the Olympiads, and they're all of them match. They're at the same spot in history. They all match. I'm telling you, You do that and you see the most incredible amount of information spill forth from that point, because you're using what God told us to use. Because what you said just a few minutes ago makes it all come real, is this. We do it when God says it's time. It's not up to Jim Barfield.
Right.
Now, believe me, I'd have been done if that was the case. I've been sitting there for 18 years waiting for this to happen.
I mean, it takes a small army to get any of these things done. You know, it takes a lot of people to. I mean, just think about all the major events and all the red tape and all the years of policy, and with just any discovery, it's not like sometimes things are discovered by accident. For the most part, people have clues, and it's a long process. I don't think people realize that.
Yeah. The Dead Sea Scrolls, found by your kid. Bedouin
looking for his goats.
The guy that figured out the Copper Scroll, just an old dumb fireman from Lawton, Oklahoma. You know, how does this happen?
Yeah, I think it's incredible, Jim. I want to ask you. I think maybe one of my last questions is, what do you think happens next in your best estimation, best guess, as far as this story?
I think this next election is going to play into this. I really do. Whether you hate Trump, love him, it doesn't matter to me. What I can tell you is that the Abrahamic Accords that they've been working on, or I believe they're still working on, is he cut out, well, not he, but they mapped out, his team mapped out a section of the West Bank that goes to Israel. Guess what they included in that piece that they mapped out? Qumran. Right? I mean, they went out of their way to make sure and loop that in there. And I'm sure it was strictly because the Dead Sea Scrolls are really important. And guys, listen, Qumran will be number 2 only to the Temple Mount. It's going to be, if I'm right, can you imagine the dome they're going to put over that? It's probably half the size of a stadium. Oh, no, half the size of a football field. And they cover this thing. And if I find 900 talents of gold in one place, they're going to have fake gold, but they're going to stack it in there, leave the hole, and then they're going to go to each one of the 57 locations, if I'm truly correct, and they're going to recreate all of that, and they're going to do what? They're going to have an amazing biblical reminder of what God has done for us. He stored his dowry for his coming bride at Qumran, the place, the seat of the prophets, the home of the Melchizedek order. And I promise you, Yeshua and John the Baptist were there at Qumran at some point. Anyway.
I love it.
I guess.
Wow. It sounds like an amazing museum. Like you're going to go look at all those things. Yeah.
Most of the tour buses, they drive right past Qumran because it's just a bunch of ruins, a set of ruins there until they found the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Do you think you'll be invited out if they decide to excavate? Do you think you'll get to be there if they do this?
I better.
Yeah, I was saying.
I better be there. Because I don't give a darn about the money, the gold. I don't care about that. But one thing I asked God was this: myself and all the guys that have stuck with me all these years to get these things out of the ground. I asked Father, I said, please let us we already got a spot to sit down and watch this whole thing happen. We've already got it picked out because I want to be there. I want to, because the work that we put into it has been an absolute labor of love. We enjoyed it 100%.
Appreciate it.
But it's been a lot of work.
I always want to be, I still joke I want to be a treasure hunter. I just think there's,
Luke wants to find the Confederate gold here.
I actually do want to do that. So me and Tony Merkel, that is a whole side story. Me and Tony Merkel talk about this all the time from the confessionals about wanting to go find the lost Confederate gold. I love this story because it has all the elements, right? It has biblical history, it has the heroes of the faith, and it has eschatology attached to it, and it has these ancient places that are rooted in, they're the root and rooted in and intertwined with our faith as Christians and with the faith of the Jewish people. You have this, it's really, like you said, it's bigger than King Tut. It's bigger than any treasure that they may ever find in Israel if this is all there. And it sounds like, based upon your work with the metal detector and sort of the things you've been allowed to do, if you will, things are there. And I love it, man. So Jim, thank you for this.
Yeah.
Can you tell our listeners where they can engage with your work and find you and find the things you're working on?
Well, yeah, they can go on my website and they can read. But listen, guys, and I want your audience to listen closely. I don't update that stuff. because it's not like I found something in John 3:16, and can tell everybody. There's things that I have to keep secret. And I have kept a lot of things secret. But they can go on there and they can read what I posted on there. And they want to send money. Don't bother. I don't want your money. I want you to go to your families, hug them, and say, "Hey, listen, guys, something big is happening. The Messiah could be coming. Come on, go to church with me this Sunday. My Jewish brothers, come on, get in the synagogue this weekend with me. Come on." And start getting your families prepared for this, because I'm telling you, we're at the door and I hear him knocking, and we just got to be patient enough for that door to open, and it's not going to be long.
That's awesome. I think a lot of people, when they start to hear how practical some of these stories are and how things are actually happening, and that we're a part of the story still, people's faith wakes up to it. And I think what we talk a lot about on our show is just the sort of the paranormal things that happen. But in order to understand modern day, the weird stuff that happens, you have to go all the way back to the beginning. So we appreciate you taking us back and sort of in the time machine where they buried this gold. My last question was going to be, do you think that they knew they were going to get taken over, so they were burying this stuff because they thought it was going to be taken, so they were working on it for years? And and all these things are just in Israel, right? All these
it's
locations.
all in Israel.
Okay.
It's actually on the very eastern edge of the West Bank, like Qumran. Look it up on the map, and it's on the very edge of Israel.
Luke's good friends with Nick Cage, so if you need help,
that's not true. Actually, not at all.
Luke always tells me he knows somebody. Like, how do you know that guy?
I don't know that guy. But I did see National Treasure. Maybe saw it twice. Might admit to that. So
that's what they're talking about. This is what they were talking about. National Treasure, the treasures of King Solomon's.
King Solomon.
Yep, that's what. This is.
If they only knew.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah. Where can our listeners get in touch with you? And
they want to contact me, just go through my website, Cup Scroll Project, and go through my website.
Follow you.
And and I like I said though, whenever I talk, usually it's on like History Channel or something like that, or guys like you. And I love doing this kind of a program because I get to meet you guys, I get to share and see your reactions. I like that because I can tell, okay, these guys are serious about what they're thinking, what they want to know, and I like that. Whether you believe it, don't believe it, it's up to you. But I can give you a lot more information.
Well, maybe we'll have to do a part 2, and that's what we do a lot on, just kind of get an introduction. This is the first time I've heard about this, so I appreciate you kind of giving me,
tell us all the secrets.
Answering some dummy questions.
I will. If you had a way to project it or put it on the screen.
Hey, we've had like 4 or 5 people invite us over there to go with them to do various trips. So we'll just
Israel. We're talking about.
We'll just plan. Yeah. We'll have to.
Qumran with Jim Barfield. Let's go. Yeah, we'll just.
Luke, why are you in the back with a shovel? What's going on back there?
Over there going.
Yeah. I'll tell them I'll buy them shovels if they're willing to do the time in prison.
Right. Yeah. But they're going to lock up the big guy here. I don't know.
well, thanks so much, Jim. Appreciate you coming on.
Guys, I loved it. Thank you very much for the invite.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jim.
Have a good one.